Okay, good morning, everyone. So I'm doing a little SimCom here, which is speaking and interpreting at the same time. It's two different languages, so they are conflicting, but I'll try it anyway. Okay, so I'm here to really speak about, actually that's a wonderful, about preferred terms, but let me first start by saying deafness is a word that symbolizes pride. And if you have any questions, the people to really ask will be obviously the deaf community if you can, because they know what they want to be called. Hearing impaired, so let me say hearing impaired is what we would have said was the politically correct term to use for many years. But for many years, this is like more than 10 years, that has been kicked out. And the reason is, I can ask the deaf community, but they have allowed me to say, the reason why hearing impaired has been kicked out is because of that last word, impairment. They say that there's nothing wrong, there's nothing that needs to be fixed. There's nothing wrong with them, they can function and they can work. So saying that they're hearing impaired is like because defect, and they're not defective. Deafness is a word of pride, and deaf is the word. Hard of hearing is what is used for people who have maybe a slight hearing loss, and they use the term hard of hearing, but deafness covers it all. So we would say the deaf community or the deaf and hard of hearing community, and that's it. So from here on out, we're not going to say hearing impaired. We're just going to say deaf or deaf and hard of hearing community. And really, it's so serious that there are businesses, organizations, NGOs who had hearing impaired in their name, and they have changed their names to really reflect and show that deafness is really the word that is used now. So it's as serious as that. Anyway, so I'm here to give a few tips. November last year, I had a workshop for a project called the Calypso Project, where I spoke with business professionals about how they can include deaf people in their environment. We had businesses, from all over. And how do you interact with your clients? How do you make your space accessible for deaf people? Deaf people pay bills. Deaf people have lives. Deaf people have children. Deaf people drive. Deaf people live. And deaf people need the ability to live like anyone else. They have the right to live and breathe just like you. And so I learned sign language when I was 7 years old. And that was 40 years ago. 40 years ago. Actually 41 years ago this year. I learned that from watching Sesame Street. From Linda on Sesame Street. That's how I started learning. That first degree I got was a scholarship that changed my life. I saw deaf people in classrooms sitting next to me, learning about culture and American philosophy, and I'm thinking, is something wrong with my deaf people? Is something wrong with my Caribbean people? I was 18. I sat there wondering, how are they deaf lawyers? How are they deaf doctors? How do they function? What is happening? But how it happened is because people made the spaces accessible. People made sure that there was always an interpreter present. It's illegal to have anything If, for example, if a deaf person wanted to go into a university or college and you deny them access, I'm talking about the US, about Canada, bigger countries, that's illegal. They have the right to have the same quality, and it's quality of education. You know, many times people say, but we gave them that. We gave them that. They should be grateful. That demeaning tone, that demeaning thought, that demeaning way to think, where you just give them something so they can be happy. No, but would you be happy with that? No, you're not going to accept that. So why should people who have no voice, as they say, but they still have a voice, persons with disabilities, people with disabilities, really know, specifically the deaf community, they do have a voice and they do speak up, but people continue to marginalize. So what do? How do we make our spaces accessible? We have workshops like these are a good beginning. So we have workshops, we have meetings and conferences where we discuss things, but the right people need to be in the room, and that's important. And people say, but you don't have a minister here, or you need to have a human rights person here. But we need to understand that we are the people. And I say that to mean, when I teach my sign language classes, I always tell them, you can forget everything that I taught you, but you must be an ally for the deaf community when you're finished. So when you go back into your work, look around. Can deaf people access this space? Look around. You go into, I sat with a deaf person it's not peculiar, but I sat with a deaf person in our hospital for 14 hours, waiting to see a doctor. And the only reason I saw a doctor so quickly was because one of my students saw me and said, oh, you can come with me. Healthcare, wrong diagnosis, giving medication without explaining because there's no interpreter. What are we doing having police investigations with no interpreters? Going to court and trying to say anything, but that doesn't happen anymore, thankfully. But that's because they are finding ways to speak up. People say, oh, I always see you on TV, next to PM. I said, that's a deaf community reason. When there were elections, deaf people said, wait, why is there no interpreter for the election when people are out giving their speeches? And they posted it on social media. And the worst thing is for people to be embarrassed on social media. So they posted it on different political parties. And so from then on, I was interpreting for a political party, and then it continued until, all the press conferences and everything. But that was because they spoke up. Why is it so difficult for people to really understand and give persons with disabilities the opportunity? I think the main problem is attitude. I think people's attitude, how they view people. I always say, if you're honest, many of us don't see persons with disabilities as our equal. If we are honest, and I say that I have been involved in this, like I said, for over 41 years, and sometimes I have to check myself when I go into a room and say, wait, this space is not accessible. Deaf people need opportunities for jobs, education. They want to learn. They want to know. They want to know what's happening all over Barbados. They want to know what's happening in the region, somebody said, but do deaf people watch the budget? I said, do you watch the budget on TV? And they said, but maybe I don't. I said, that's the point. If you want to watch it, you can. If you turn on the TV, you can. When you turn on the TV, deaf people should immediately have access through an interpreter and closed caption. People say, but if you have one, well, yes, one is great. It's better to have an interpreter, but it's best to have an interpreter and access to closed captioning as well. So you have full communication and full access. So the point is, if you want it, you have access. Why isn't that the same for all? If you go back to your work environment, just look around and see, for example, the banks. Some of the banks were in my workshop, and they were thinking, but this is simple. No more ticketing system, no more voicing. Next is customer number one, when people can't hear you. So that's why you should always have the numbers blinking so you can see who's next. That's simple. Just simple things. Now we have one good thing about COVID, one really good thing. We all now know how to use a computer, a laptop, a phone. We are all connected. So we can't say, oh, well, I can't go. People are on Zoom, on Google Meets, on everything. Doctors call me on WhatsApp video to interpret for a deaf patient. And different things, because the world has now opened up more with technology. And we need to use the technology for our benefit to make sure that people have access to these spaces. So my final point will always be, what can you do? Not my minister, not my MP, not my boss, but me. When you leave here and you go out there, you look around and say, you know, I am able to move freely. How can I make this more accessible? I go into an office at the airport when you're coming in. I mean, everywhere, a restaurant, to order. You have Starbucks now who have interpreters on their drive-through. Not here. Starbucks in the US. Oh, that would be really good. Starbucks, they have their drive-through has somebody who, and what do you need to know? Oh, tall, latte, you know, mocha, you know, $11, $12, and a screen. We all have the technology. We need to use it. Use the technology to make those spaces accessible for all. Thank you.